Good morning, everyone. Today I will be presenting a presentation on Rorschach test. We will be covering a wide range of topics. We will start with projective test and we'll discuss some information on projective test, different tests and how they work. Then we'll go on to introduction. Then we will see some work that has happened in India with regards to Rorschach and projection tests. Then we'll talk about the significant events. Then we'll talk about the actual testing of Rorschach and description of plates, coding, and then we'll summarize the presentation. Now, what is projection? Projection is an unconscious process whereby an individual attributes certain thoughts, attitudes, emotions, or characteristics to object in his environment. So, as the word says, it's projection. So, you project your thoughts, attitudes, or emotions or characteristics to objects in the environment. What is projective test? It is a psychological test in which a subject responds to ambiguous or unstructured standard stimuli. So all of the stimuli that are given are very standardized, and these are ambiguous, so that the test taker does not have predetermined thoughts or predetermined motions about the things, such as a series of cartoons, abstract patterns, or incomplete sentences, which are analyzed in order to determine underlying personality traits, feelings, or attitudes. Now, how this is done is like a majority of the sample is tested. They are given unstructured standard stimuli, and based on that, certain patterns are recognized, and on basis of these patterns, the projective tests are determined. Now, what are the different types of projective test? There is something called as an associated inkblot technique. One is Holtzman gave a technique in 1961. Rorschach, that we are going to discuss, gave the Rorschach test in 1921, and somatic inkblots came in 1965. And the word association was given by Carl Jung in 1906 and Kenton Rorschach in 1910. A very interesting story about the Rorschach test is also that he started doing this tests on paper tissues, and later on we only have 10 standardized plates, but Rorschach had a lot of inkblots that he would test on patients. And when he finally decided to standardize them in 1921, what he did was he came out with 10 of the most significant plates that he had, and then he combined them to make a Rorschach test. Then there are construction techniques, stat, cat and bat, and Doshan's test. Then there are completion techniques. There is sentence completion. Then there is Rosevic's picture frustration. Then there is expressive techniques, draw a person test, Bender visual, motor gestalt test. Then there is a choice technique, which is picture arrangement tests. So all of these are basically all the projection tests that are available to us. Now, how do projective tests work? The key to projective test is the ambiguity of the stimuli. According to theory behind such tests, clearly defined questions results in answers that are carefully crafted by the conscious mind. By providing the participant with a question or stimuli that is not clear, the underlying and unconscious motivations or attitudes are revealed. Now, in our daily life, the kind of questions that we are continuously asked, we have a set pattern of answering them, and we have set answers or set thoughts already based on those questions. That's why the stimuli that is given should be something that is a little ambiguous, should not be clear, and should involve the unconscious motivations. We'll discuss some FAQs about Rorschach test. Now, who developed the Rorschach test? Hermann Rorschach in 1921. How many cards does Rorschach test consist? It has 10 cards. How many are multicolored? There are 3 multicolored cards and 5 cards with black and white shadings. Who first used the term projective? It was used by Sigmund Freud in 1896. Since when Rorschach started working on Inkblot? 1911. And can pathology be identified on Rorschach? Yes. Now, a lot of pathology cannot be identified on the basis of questions, in which Rorschach is used to identify the pathology that is not clearly out. So it is kind of a way also to get out some psychopathology out of the patient. Why is Rorschach called a projective test? Because here the patient is supposed to project his or her real personality into the Inkblot via the interpretation. Name a test other than Rorschach based on Inkblot technique, then Holtzman Inkblot technique we have seen, and somatic Inkblot technique. And two Indians who have worked on the Inkblot techniques are Professor H.S. Asthana and Professor D.L. Dubey. Now we'll discuss some significant events when it comes to Rorschach technique. Rorschach typically made his inkblots on tissue paper. A large number of them were donated to the Rorschach Archives and Museum in 1998 and 1999 by his son and daughter, Wardine and Elizabeth. A lot of these are also Viva questions. Rorschach Research Foundation, popularly known as Rorschach Workshop, was established in 1968. Beck was the first person to complete his PhD work on Rorschach in 1932. Dr. Levy persuaded / encouraged and provided him a copy of Rorschach's figures and monograph, and also supervised his research work. Then what work was done in India? In India, Professor H.S. Asthana was the first scholar to work on the Rorschach. His first report was submitted to a university for PhD degree in the year 1950. Thereafter, P. Kumar, G. Prabhu, Mukherjee and Rai Chaudhary and B.L. Dubey have conducted research works and have developed norms for different population for different usage. So the two names who have initially worked is Professor H.S. Asthana, and the next famous person was Professor B.L. Dubey. Now, what are the main points in conducting the Rorschach test? First, you have to make sure of the seating arrangement. You should be seated right across the test taker so that all of your inkblots are actually hidden from him, and he does not see the card before it is revealed to him. Then you have to give the instructions that I will reveal the card, and then you have to answer. You have to tell what you see in the card. What are the materials required? You'll require Rorschach plate. You'll require a recording sheet. It's a sheet which looks like an Excel sheet in which you record all the answers. Then you'll need a stopwatch as clock, because you have to give around 1 minute for the patient to answer. Then you'll need pens, pencils, very obvious. Then you need a plastic stylus, and you need a manual for interpretation also. Then how it free association / administration, the next step, which involves card turning. You have to see the reaction time and response time. You have to note the responses. Verbalization, the verbatim should also be recorded, and the behavior should also be noted. Then after that, you also have to inquire, which comes into the inquiry phase. You have to inquire on presentation of the cards, location, determinants and contents. And then scoring has to be done. Location number, form quality and populars have to be noted. Populars as in what has been continuously seen as a pattern. And then you have to summarize. What are the do's and don'ts of Rorschach? Proper sitting arrangement should be made. Instruction in unambiguous language. Now the plates are ambiguous, but what we say the patient should understand. So the instruction should be in an unambiguous language. We should record response verbatim. We should record the reaction time and record all movements of the cards placed, behavioral observation and comments. These are what the psychologist does on her personal basis. Avoid putting words in the subject's mouth. Handle enquiries properly for each response. Accept rejection at least after 1 minute of presentation. So if the patient is like, I can't see anything, then try to tell the patient, okay, try to look closely, try to observe more, but do not be like, इसमें bat दिख रहा है क्या तुमको, इसमें शेर दिख रहा है क्या तुमको, इसमें हाथी दिख रहा है. Do not do that. Do not give words, do not put words into the patient's mouth, and give him around 1 minute of time to understand and interpret. Now there are 10 plates, as we can see. All of these are the different plates. We'll go through the images of the plates also once. The first plate is black and white. Identification name is general plate. Then black, red and white. As we have seen that there are these 5 black plates and 3 colored ones. The last 3 are multicolored. So that leaves us 8. And then there are 2 plates, black, red and white, which have 3 colors. So the second plate is female sex, then black, red, white is then reality orientation plate. Then the next 2 are all black plate, one is male authority and one is reality orientation. Then light black and white, as we have seen, like black and white with shading, male sex, then lightly shaded black and white, mother authority. Then the last 3 multicolored, 8, 9, 10, reality orientation, emotional tolerance and organizational CNT. This is the first general plate. This is the female's sex. Reality orientation, male authority, the fourth plate. Reality orientation, the fifth plate. Male sex, the fifth plate. Do not pay a lot of attention on the plates, is because if you ever go through a Rorschach, it should still be unambiguous for you. Now, how are we going to code the response? The first point is the location. So when the plate was shown to the patient, did the patient pay attention on the whole blot? Then that will be coded as WD. Commonly used part is there for every plate, 1 to 20 divided the section 1 to 20 section part, then you will score a D. Rarely used part is a 20 plus part, then you will score a capital D and a small d, and white space will be S. So like this, you have to score for what the patient has seen. So for the location, you will score these. Then for the determinants, that the patients play more attention on form, structure, movement, chromatic color, shading texture, shading dimension, shading diffusion. Now it can be that the patient had some movement and also paid attention on the shading structure. So you can code both of them. It's not like determinants में एक ही है तो एक ही है. Then content that the patient, what content the patient saw in the inkblot. Was it a human detail, animal detail, plant, tree, inner body, abstraction, architectural, fire, blood, mythology, nature, sex? So according to that, then you will again give the responses. Condition for movement response, intrapsychic activities. So did the patient observe movements in human beings, movements in part of the human being, human-like activity? All of these things are also supposed to be noted. Now, once you note all of these things, what happens is then you will structurize the most common answers, and you will try to find the most significant answers, and then summarize the test into whatever interpretation you have. Now let's come into the administration. Responses or free association phase. This is the first phase. The test taker is instructed to tell what is on the each card. So this is when you have turned the card has been presented to the test taker, and you have to ask what this might be. इसमें आपको क्या ये क्या हो सकता है. So then next is the inquiry phase. Examiner attempts to determine what features of the in-block played a major role in formulating the test taker's perception of an image. Then comes the response phase. Verbatim, no probing, silence by the examiner is the rule. I don't see anything there. So the test taker might say something such as, I don't see anything there, in which you have to say, take your time, we are in no hurry. You know, do not, as I have already said, do not try to probe the patient or put words into the patient's mouth. Then if you take time and look some more, I think you'll find something else too. So a lot of patients might be like, bas kala dhabba hai. So you can use something like, if you take time and look some more, I think you'll find something else too. Then the response time is to be noted and total time is to be noted. Enquiry phase, conducted after all responses are given to 10 cards. Gain information needed to score accurately. Now we have gone through what parts of the scoring we need to summarize the test. So any aspect which the patient might have not touched, you can ask in the inquiry phase so as to score the test properly. Complete location sheet not used to generate new information. So this is just an example. Okay, we've done them all. Now we are going back through them. It won't take long. I want to help me see what you saw. I am going to read what you said, and then I want you to show me where in the blot you saw it. So this is the location part. And what is there that makes it look like that. So it might be the human, animal detail, all of that. So I can see it too. I'd like to see it just like you did. So help me now. Do you understand? So this becomes the inquiry phase, just so that we have all the information necessary for the scoring. Inquiry phase focuses on gaining information and ask questions on location, which is where is it, determinants, what makes it look like that, and content, what is it. Now interpretation. Interpretation consists of 3 steps. Listing the sequence of codes or scores, which I've said you'll have all the coding, H, DM, animal, sex, nature, whatever you have. So you'll list the sequence of codes or scores, reading the frequency of each variable, performing various calculations required to obtain the ratio, percentations, and derived scores. Calculations are based on total responses, popular responses, color shock and shading shock, form quality, qualitative analysis, and quantitative analysis. This has to be done after you have all the data for it. Now, a lot of you might recognize this character. This is a very famous comic book character from the movie Watchmen. And the name of the character is Rorschach. He wears a mask, and the comic book writer basically made this character based on the Rorschach test. And the mask that he sees has all the 10 inkblots continuously changing. And the character uses the mask in order to determine what is going through the patient's mind. When Rorschach died in 1921, when Rorschach died in 1922, after giving the test in 1921, a lot of people used the Rorschach test as a very black and white technique. They gave it to Nazi criminals to determine. They used it for job interviews, and they used it as a very determinative test that it is this, and it is either it is there or either it is not there. In this comic book, the guy who has written it has done a very social commentary that the world is not all black and white. What responses you get are not absolute. The comic book character believed that the responses that are given by the patient are either yes or no. But in reality, even if after you've administered the Rorschach test, it is not 100% sure that whatever you have obtained on the Rorschach test is the absolute truth. That is why after the death of Rorschach, the test was in contention was because people had started using it as the absolute truth. Then in 2013, it again came back into medical significance and again started getting used into medical literature, was because we realized that this is a tool used to help make a diagnosis, but not a complete test used for the diagnosis of a patient. So thank you for listening, and if anybody has any questions, they can ask.